Welcome to the Route to Success. I'm Sara Orellana. Today I am joined by Randy Rush, a nonprofit leader serving individuals and families facing substance use disorders. We'll talk about what hope looks like in real recovery, how a business-minded approach can feel impact, and why partnerships and lived experience change outcomes. If you or someone you love is navigating addiction, this conversation provides practical ways communities can show up and help. I will also make sure in the podcast description to share a link with the with Randy's website and any resources that we can provide to help you with this journey. Hello, Randy. Thank you so much for coming and being willing to talk about such an important topic today.
Sara, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I've been looking forward to it. And as I told you when we first met, I'm always eager to talk about recovery because people do recover. And sometimes we lose sight of that people can get better. They do get better, not just the individual, but the family can heal as well. And, we want to celebrate that and spread that message.
Most definitely. I love the positive attitude that you're putting on this and the way you're taking it so seriously. This is going to be a great conversation. All right. First and foremost, and something that is definitely a passion of my own as a person who's worked in nonprofit work, what moved you from corporate sales leadership into nonprofit recovery work? And how did your family's journey shape this decision? And I also, if you would just touch on something that we talked on briefly that both of us connected on, is how a for-profit mindset can help you run a more successful nonprofit. And right now, I just mean from the business and leadership aspect, not the work outputs.
Right. Yeah. Well, okay. First off, let me tell you how I got here. My own son experienced a substance use disorder. We had a phone call when he was 17 from a teacher that had alerted us. And we thought, like most good parents, we were diligent in watching him. And we thought if we, we would catch him if he was doing something. And, if he was drinking or smoking, we thought we would catch all of that. Unfortunately, what we found out, Xanax and benzodiazepines have no odor, no smell. It's easy to hide. Matter of fact, he had taken one of his sports participation trophies and undid the bottom of it, and there were Xanax pills stashed up inside of his participation trophy. If you never took that, and he had something else put up there so it wouldn't make noise. So, this idea that you would know, even good parents, which we're all good parents, we love our kids. It's hard, you're not with them all the time. So, we were really thrust in a world we really didn't know anything about. And in our due diligence, trying to understand how this impacted him, how it happened, how do we help him, we really realized there were not a lot of resources. And at the very same time, when we were going through that, there was another family in our area here in the Midlands of South Carolina that were doing the same thing. They were experiencing this with their son, and they were, very philanthropic and very entrepreneurial, and they had been supportive of another nonprofit. And when they realized, again, like us, there wasn't anything, they started something. And so it really wasn't on my radar to get involved with the nonprofit. I was traveling a good bit. Was running sales teams for IT and outsourcing and software companies. But we understood how lost we felt and how alone and the stigma. And so we did get involved, me kind of kicking and screaming at the urging of my wife. I went to a couple of things, and then eventually we went through some training to be a family coach so that we could walk along beside other families as they were going through this, not to tell them what to do, but like a coach, just say, hey, I tried that. This was what I experienced when I tried that with my son. Might work for you, but I don't know. And then eventually I joined the board. And then as we were really coming out of COVID in 2021, our executive director resigned. And, things weren't going great for the organization. And the board asked me after 2 or 3 months, would I be willing to come and take this position? And, my first response was, no, if you think I'm going to go downstairs and tell my wife, hey, I'm going to take a major pay cut to go run this nonprofit, I go, I'm not sure financially we're in a place where we can do that. But I have to admit, I was intrigued because, you travel and you go get in a plane, go someplace else. You're not really in some ways investing in your local community. And I wanted to make a difference in the back of my mind in my local community. And so I went very quickly from, I don't think I can do this, to 2 weeks later when I met with the board, really walking in and saying, this is absolutely what I believe I'm called to do. And, and that's how we got there and kind of launched that journey. Then the other part of your question is about the business kind of mindset. Coming from a sales background, you're always measured. I always say, when you're in sales, your end of the year review is very simple. This was your target. How did you come out against that target, right? You make your target, great. If you overachieve, fantastic. You can make good money, you can go on a trip, you get all kind of kudos. Miss it, you have a problem. So there was that kind of growth and achievement mentality that we have to measure things. We have to look at the impact that we make in the community. And then, I didn't look at this wasn't a job. This was a calling. I had a job. I had a good job, make good money, but this was a calling. And I'm like, if we're going to do this, then we have to look at how can we maximize the impact that we make in the community. And so we looked at, who do we need to spend time with? And, the original executive director said, I only spend time with funders and referrers, people that can refer people to us or people that can fund the organization. And I remember walking away thinking, well, how do you know who those people are? Right. I looked at it more like a pipeline, like we would in a sit down and evaluate our pipeline in a business deal. We have people that are prospects. We have people that are suspects. We have people that are, are people that we believe if we spent more time with, we could grow that business more. And we kind of bifurcated all our folks up, people in the community, and said, we need to figure out and spend as much time with everybody because we don't know what that might lead us. But we do have to figure out pretty quickly, is that somebody we want to spend more time with? Where can they take us to? Or do we need to kind of say, hey, we're going to put them in this box over here? So we looked at a lot of things that way, and we looked at people like the state alcohol and drug abuse agency as not someone that we didn't want was in our business. We said we need to be as close to them as we possibly can, and then we try to look at other organizations like us. Are there any other organizations like us? What can we learn from them? And let's go spend time with them.
Right.
Our group had never went and spent a day with another recovery community organization ever. Ever. And I was like, I was on the phone going, hey, the biggest one in the state is in the upstate, and the CEO was relatively new. And I said, hey, I'd love to come up and take you to lunch. And she's like, that'd be great. Sarah, I learned tons of things. And then I went through her building, met all of their people, and then sent my people up there. Hey, you need to go, Trish, our program manager, you need to go up there and meet with Mike, the program manager there. Right. And so it was that kind of idea, I think, of the way we look at things in business, right? What can I learn? What can I grow? How do we expand our impact? And then the other thing we thought, I always have this thing, right? Growing, things that are alive should be growing. Dead things atrophy. Things that are alive should grow. And, but I thought if we're growing and our impact is increasing, then from a funding standpoint, a people standpoint, and community impact standpoint, that's stuff that we ought to be able to leverage to gain more funding and gain more, people to come partner with us. So we began to really measure that, right? Not just measure it, by the numbers, but to be able to go back to like the community and say, hey, here was the financial impact to this county. If we saw this many people that were involved in the criminal justice system, I mean, great for them that hopefully we can help them not go back to jail because they failed a drug test, or that we can help them reunite with their families. That's the goal. But to go back to the county and say, every person you house in that jail is worth X amount of dollars. If we only kept so many out, look at how much we saved the county. Look at how much impact we made, or your investment, your little investment. Look at the impact it made. We saw last year 1,000 people. We provided 1,000 counseling sessions by a licensed therapist at zero charge. You
Right.
know, I mean, so it was being able to take those things and quantify them in a way that we could go to our funders and say, one of the hospitals and say, look, if we keep these a number of these folks from returning to the emergency department, number one, that frees you up to see the people that are really needs to be triaged because they are really sick. But number two, this is the dollar amount that you were spending to see those folks. If we could save you that money, then that is money that you could place somewhere else within your hospital system. And, that does come from, I think, a business mindset, because in a lot of those cases, you're dealing with businesses and they have the altruistic idea of they want to help the community, but they run a business. They need to see the bottom line, and what did you do impact their bottom line?
Randy, you gave so many nuggets there. I just kind of want to circle back and summarize some of what you said because there's so much value. The first thing that you said that really, I'm just going to be honest, made my heart leap is that you said every parent is a good parent. I love how you start out with that approach because as a fellow parent, I think it's really easy on rough days to think what a bad parent you are. But if you take the mindset of I'm a good parent, I need to learn more, I think that just opens you up to so much more success. And I love that that's how you approach this. Then thank you so much for candidly sharing your journey. I think the more we are vulnerable and honest and share our journeys, the more other people realize they're not the only one. They're not alone, that this happens and it's okay. And we'll get you through that. I think that's the most important thing. Then moving to something I'm very passionate about and I've been passionate about for all my years in nonprofit work is the way that you approach fundraising. You approach it in very strategic ways. One, you completely remove the silos. So often nonprofits remain in these silos where they just talk to themselves, they just work within themselves. You took it upon yourself to seek as many partnerships and collaborations as possible, and you took as many learning opportunities as possible. When I was a CEO, when I was in the role that you're in, I did the same thing as you. I would visit as many programs as I could that were similar. I would take notes, I would ask questions, I would send my staff. And that's when you got that synergy and those great projects. I love also the way that you're out in the community. I call that friend building. And it's so important for nonprofits to not just have that funder base, but to have that friend base. And the reason that you need that is that's technically your community outreach, because what I've learned in the 20 years that I've worked in social services and nonprofits, right, is you don't know what you don't know. And so often the people most in need of a service don't know it exists. But if you go out and you tell more and more people about it, then that just becomes common conversation. For about a 5-year period of time, I was a volunteer for the Alzheimer's Association and I taught classes about Alzheimer's. And I was probably one of the volunteers with the highest teaching rate. And people asked me why. And I was like, because when my grandfather was going through this, we didn't know about you. And it could have saved us so much grief. And my goal was just to get their flyer in every house. Because if you just know, you share. And that's the same thing you're doing. And so there's just so many nuggets to what you said about how you're approaching it. And I also, one of the key things that you said is you are taking what your nonprofit does and you are using business language and speaking to businesses in terms that they understand and showing them that ROI. And in today's day and age, that ROI is more important than ever. And the way that you're doing that is so ideal. I teach that, I lecture it, I preach it, and I love talking to somebody who's just doing this naturally. It's wonderful. So if you're listening to this podcast, I would really recommend you go back and re-listen to that first section that Randy spoke about, because there's about 15 years of experience right there that will just set you miles ahead of your competitors. So Randy, thank you. Thank you. Okay, you answered that question. Let me go to the next one. Walk us through your harm reduction and hospital response model. What happens in the first 30 minutes and what results matter most to you and your partners? And I should have said this beforehand. Randy has a very unique program where he partners with the hospital. And so maybe just do a little lead in and then talk about that program. That would be great.
Yeah, we knew really early on that we wanted to somehow get connected to people as close to the experience of an overdose as possible. And so we really started a project back during COVID. I was on the board then, and the organization was able to win a small grant through the National Association of City and County Health Officials to try to get into the emergency department. But what ended up happening is that we had, because of COVID, they wouldn't let us in. And when I came on board, we came up with this idea that we would take prepaid phones and put them in a pouch with our information and give those to EMS, and EMS would give those to people as they went into the hospital. And and we actually have one of our employees now. He overdosed 13 times, and on the 13th time, the EMS gave him that pouch, and he didn't pick the phone up and call right that moment, but he looked and he said, "One day I want to be the person on the other end of that phone call." And eventually he came to us. He went through the peer support training. We ended up hiring him. For the first probably, I don't know, year, we called him Pouch. And now, even if you go in his office, he's got this big thing on the top of it, Pouch. But, he went from being peer support to, supervisor, to now he's our data and grants contract administrator. And so, it just shows to us the power of reaching out and being there. So as we came out of COVID, we really worked hard with the community foundation for the hospital to try to secure funding, and went back through again. And we took some of that data, like we talked about, to say we really believe that we could make not just an impact in the individual's lives, we could help you from a business standpoint, decrease the traffic, or help you deal, or even help your social work team. So what we are now, we have a whole team of people, and it's a very, very diverse team. We primarily use contractors, and they'll take a 4-hour shift. And so from 8 a.m. until midnight, 7 days a week, our team is on call in these 4-hour shifts. And if you have someone that experiences an overdose and they're transported to the emergency department, the social worker will come in once they're stabilized, and they contact us. And usually our coach is there really within about 30 minutes. Now, sometimes it depends on, where the patient is in the process. But, a lot of times, Sarah, it gives us a chance, if the patient's not, at a state where they can converse with us, gives us a chance to talk to the family, gives us a chance to say, look, there's resources available. We'd love to talk to your loved one when they're at a place where they're ready. And the important part of that too is the people that are going in there, they are people with lived experience. It's people, if the patient is at the place where they're stabilized and they can talk, which is normal, it's, hey, I've been where you are. I was you. Mm-hmm. I was transported here, by EMS. I know what's going on. I know where you are. There's no shame and no judgment here, and that's a big thing, right?
Right.
Would you like to start something different? Come, let us help you. Let us connect you with medication-assisted treatment, right? Let us help you. There's a different way that you can live your life. I did it. You can do it. You're no different. So it's a way that we can connect people sometimes when, to be honest, they're scared. Maybe this is their first time. It might be the nudge that they need to go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm here. And so we've seen amazing things from this program. I wish I could tell you that every person, engaged with us in some way and began the recovery journey. That's not true. But, last year we saw over 340 people in the emergency department, and over 50% engaged us in some kind of way. They either took the call, from the coach, came in and did an intake, started something, and out of that we had quite a few start medication assisted treatment. We had over 100 people that began some kind of coaching relationship with us. We help people get housing. We help people do, everything that they need to build their recovery.
Right.
And we were able at the end of the year to give a report back to the hospital that really we felt like we saved them, six figures in easily in what their costs are in their emergency department. And we've just been awarded, we're going to be funded. They want us to bring someone in 24 hours a day to add more to the team, to have people that are there, regardless if it's in the middle of the night. So we told them we do it on a test basis, at least to see, how it would work. But it's amazing what happened in that environment. The emergency room doctors were really the ones that pushed for it. The social work staff was not very, they weren't very friendly at first. They were concerned that we were going to come and take their jobs, I guess. I don't know what it was. But eventually, now what happens is once somebody walks in, now the social worker will grab our coach and say, "Hey, I want you to see this person down here too, because they didn't come in on an overdose, but hey, they're intoxicated, or we know that they're a frequent person that comes here. They have a substance disorder. Would you be willing to go down there and talk to them?" And our coaches obviously say, "Yeah, we'd be happy to."
Right.
And we've been really blessed. We've got folks who, I've got one girl that she was a medical social worker in Florida, is in recovery now. And, she was key in being able to make that connection with the social work team and the doctors, because she had that experience. But the whole team has been amazing. It's, we're proud of the work they do, and the impact in the community and for the hospital is amazing.
I love how you're giving doctors actionable tools, something they can
Yes.
use right away. And I love how you're giving the patients hope, and it's instant hope, because there's nothing more inspiring than somebody saying, "I've been where you are and you can get out." I couldn't do that. I don't think I'd be very inspiring, but to have somebody that is in recovery say that, it's, I've had other business owners say things to me, it just helps so much. There's so much positivity in what you do. Um, Many of your staff have lived experience. How do you recruit, train, and support them so their past becomes a professional strength rather than a barrier? Because in my experience, so many people will not want to give that second chance. But personally and professionally, I found giving that second chance to typically results in some of the best employees that you will ever get, and people that you learn the most from. So how do you handle all of that?
Well, that's a great question. It definitely took a second, right, to change your mindset. You come from corporate,
Yes.
you get someone's resume, you just certain things you start picking through, right? And
Mhm.
so I remember early on, um, one of our folks had completed the peer support training and become certified, and our program manager wanted to hire them. And I said, I'm looking at the resume. I go, "Well, it's a big gap right here. What is this?" And our program manager said, "That's where she was getting the lived experience that would make her a good person for this job." I'm like, "Oh yeah, yeah." So for us, there are things we look at. We do realize that we're taking individuals that may not have worked in a professional office
Mhm.
environment. And so for the first group that we really hired, we realized some of the things that, some of us may take for granted. They'd never sent an email before, never seen Outlook before. You have to be able to go in to our recovery data platform, which is our participant database. You have to be able to put in like case notes, soap notes, those type things to say, "Hey, I saw this. Here's the plan. We came in."
Right.
That's intimidating for someone who's had maybe been involved in the criminal justice system or has had a substance use problem. Now, some people, we have plenty of people in the organization. They were business owners, they were professionals, still has a substance use disorder, and but we have had people that they never really had a job like that. So we sent them to the local technical college to get some training, and it was free, and they got scholarships to go. There's I can't remember what it's called, but it basically takes you through Excel, Word,
Uh-huh.
Outlook, and teaches you how to do those type things. And they were so eager.
Hmm.
So that's one thing, right? Is we have to be willing to invest in these folks if we believe in them, and we do believe in second chances. Um, and to say, hey, we want you to grow, and we're willing to invest and give you some time to go do that. And then the second part, right? This is a people business. And so the other part we do look at is those people skills. One of the folks she's amazing for us. When she began her recovery journey, she became a server in a restaurant, and she was like a team lead at a big, buffet place. She had great people skills. She was fantastic. She stepped out of that, came to us, got trained, and she's amazing. She's actually embedded in the other hospital in town. It's a different program. They don't do it through the emergency department, but she works with the social work team there, and they give her a list of people to see, and then her job is to try to connect them with the clinic that the hospital has set up to get them connected to medication assisted treatment and other things like that. But you do have to be willing to take a chance. And one of the things that we do is we like to hire people on a part-time basis as a 1099 contractor to let them start kind of coming around, start them off slow. We do outreach where we go out in the community, sometimes even in unhoused areas, and we pass out harm reduction kits. It'll have, Narcan or xylazine test strips, fentanyl test strips, hygiene issue items. We partner with the University of South Carolina School of Medicine, and we'll do wound care events and bring people that are in the med school. If you're an intravenous user, you can come and they'll check you out and things like that. So one of the ways that we can kind of test people to see, are you really cut out for this, is we let them go out on those outreach teams and see, in a part-time basis, is this really your cup of tea? And most of the people a good number of the people that have worked with us full time now, that's how they got started. And then, we do try to pour into people and give them chances. And our team does a lot of professional development. And we have a couple of licensed therapists out in town. One is in personal recovery. The other one, the bulk of her practice has been around recovery. And they've both been great, right? Coming in and spending time with our folks. We'll do things like conflict resolution. Sometimes it's about new stuff. We'll have vendors come in about new medication assisted treatment. They'll come in and talk about, we had the domestic violence team come in and help educate our folks about what's that. Because Sarah, what we really find out, the way you make it sound is they're a peer support specialist that's going to help people with their substance use. But in the end, these people are really social workers. They're helping people. The real big assessment that we do when someone comes in is we'll do some, depression, things like that. But the one we look at is called a VARC, and it's really measuring someone's recovery capital. Do you have the things necessary that's going to help you sustain your recovery? Do you have connections to your family? Do you have a place to live? Do you have insurance? Do you have the documents that you would need to go get a job? And then our team will literally help them, get those things and work on that. So you got to have a heart for people and be empathetic to be in performing this role. And, it's amazing to watch our people grow. I don't know if I told you the story, but, you have to find people wherever you can find them. And we are one of the training centers to train and certify peer support specialists. So that's a good feeding ground for us. Out of every class, I'm asking, who did you identify some folks that would be good fits with us? I did the first part of one of the classes one time, and there was a guy in the class, and I heard him kind of under his breath talking to one of the other people in the class, and he said, "Yeah, I was incarcerated for 16 years." And then I ran up to him and I went, "You're in prison for 16 years?" And he kind of backed up and I went, "Man, that's awesome. We're looking for someone to work with probation department and parole." I go, "That's great." And then I had to step back. "No, I'm sorry that happened to you. But hey,
Right.
here's your chance to use your lived experience, your unique lived experience, to be able to help others. And he's been with us probably now almost 2 years. And man, the connection, we meet, quarterly with the agent in charge of the probation pardon and parole office. And he just constantly talks about, and the other ones, she just constantly talks about, Devin, and what an amazing job he does and how he connects with these folks, and just says, hey, dude, that was me and I can help, so.
It's all about speaking the same language.
Right.
And you're hitting on that every time. And what I love that you're highlighting is the need to meet someone's basic needs before you can help them recover. And so often I think a lot of nonprofits miss that. You can't just give somebody food if they don't have a place to go and cook it.
No.
You got to look at that basic needs. I always go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You got to meet those basic needs before you can help them move up.
Yeah, and it's easy to tell someone, hey, now that you've gotten out of the detention center, or now that you're whatever, you've overdosed, now you should stop. But if I'm not connected to family, if I don't have meaningful things to do in my life, I don't have a place to live, and I don't have I have untreated mental health issues, all of those things, it's just overwhelming. And I would do the exact same thing. I would go right back to where I was.
Right.
And so, yeah, we have to meet those people's needs and help them begin to, help them get what it's going to take really to sustain that recovery.
Right. That's so beautiful. So beautiful. Something that you have talked about consistently through this podcast are partnerships. And partnerships have definitely powered your expansion in your ability to provide such a high level of service. Can you kind of define what makes a partner good, and how do you structure win-win pilots with your different partners?
Yeah, I'll never forget, one of the clients we had when I was in the outsourcing industry asked me one time, said, Randy, do you want to be a vendor, or do you want to be a partner? And I'm like, well, tell me your definition of what the differences are. And he said, well, a vendor's somebody I buy things from. A partner's somebody I go to war with. And I was like, I want to be a partner.
Exactly.
And the partner for us, means that we're going to have to probably do things, and the people that we value that are above and beyond maybe what we would do for somebody else. When they ask us to, hey, can you do this? We were going to say yes. We're going to find a way. But in that give and take, what's your commitment to us? And so we went out and we started looking at who would be good partners. And I think to be a good partner, to find good partners, you have to be a good partner. And, you have to be able to tell people, look, we are all in this together. We in this ditch together, and we're here to help you get out. And, you kind of, the idea of you start with us, make some kind of commitment. We will overwhelm you from our response. But I got to have some kind of commitment. And maybe that might be, hey, on a part-time basis, we won't appear supported here for 20 hours a week or 2 days a week. I'm like, we can do that, because if you make a commitment to us and you're going to help fund that position for a couple of days a week, I'm going to probably end up saying, hey, you stay there 2 or 3 more days or a couple more days. We'll find a way to fund that through some other thing. And once we get someone in, so like we have a person that's full-time at the major housing for the unhoused, major shelter for the unhoused here in the Midlands area. And, he goes above and beyond. He's there more than what they pay for. It's not that kind of vendor relationship. It is a partner relationship. When they ask, hey, can y'all help us here? I mean, like we go above and beyond, and we show up as a team to say, you're important to us. If this is important to you, we will be here in numbers and all those things. So, that's part of it. And then the other thing is looking at who can be a partner. And for us, it's a people business. So it really is a lot of times about placing someone there. And so we're quick to throw out, could we put someone in your building? Could we get someone there to run meetings? Could we get someone there that would do one-on-one coaching? Could you give us a space to come in and do harm reduction? And the people that kind of open up their arms Like I said, if you go an inch, we're going to go a mile. And a lot of times it's people that they are constrained because it's government functioning. And sometimes they say, well, this is what I can do right now. And I'm going to have to run it through the, look, I get all that. You're going to have to send it out for, I know, send it out for bid, and funding and finance is going to be hard. If you do this, we'll love bomb you, so to speak. And so we have a number of those type relationships where, we're involved with either a city or county. You got to have transparency because that's important to them. When we tell everybody we're an open book, we'll send you any kind of financial report you need, anything we can do. But you have to, I think, develop that partner mindset that everybody you talk to we will say, hey, is there any way that we could partner on this? Is there any way that we could do something together on this? You're doing that. And then, all these things that we go to these events, there's all kind of things they're constantly going on, these community events. We look for people not just to go and pass out our, swag or harm reduction stuff. We're looking for who's there that we could partner with. Maybe we'll run, hey, you sponsor a mutual aid meeting in your building. Where could we go to do something with? People in that neighborhood. We'll come do an outreach event there. Will you partner with us and sponsor it? Because we can't be everywhere and can't be everything to everybody. We have to leverage people that are in those communities and partner with them and get them to open doors in a way, in some cases, where we're not.
Right. Right. I think, Randy, what you said again is just filled with gold nuggets. It's stepping out of those silos, removing those walls, and understanding that in order to be a successful nonprofit, you have to partner
You do.
because of manpower, resources, as you said, having relationships, locations, it's everything. And the more you partner, the stronger your organization and their organization becomes. And I would dare to say, and make this assumption is that because of all of your partnerships, your funding, be it through grants or donations, have increased versus decreased.
Yes. Yes. Our funding has increased quite a bit in the last few years. Now, it's a struggle. It's never enough because I always believe I believe we're called to do more. But I mean, I think when I first got here, it was a little bit, we had not had an event. It was kind of coming out of COVID. I think our revenue is about 330,000. Last year we were over 2 million. So, and a lot of that comes from to me, the bigger the impact and the more that you do, the just opens up doors for, other people to say, hey, did you see this? Did you see that grant? Or, hey, I think you guys would be a good fit here. And, we've had a lot of that. We just recently, we had one where, someone contacted us and said, hey, I think that you guys would be a good fit for this. It might in some cases be just a tad outside your wheelhouse, but I think you could shape this to pair up, maybe community health workers with peer support, and no one else would be doing that. And so, it probably wasn't from a pure peer support and substance use way. It wasn't something probably a lot of people would do. And when the grants came out and the awards we were the only organization that did anything like that. And so it was good. It was different. And now we're even looking at another county to do that in. So we try to make sure that it's not scope creep, and sometimes that's hard. But we're always looking at how can we increase our impact. The more people we see, the more good we do, then we know that we'll be blessed.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. So obviously, hope is a practice. It's a muscle. When I teach about hope, I always teach that it's a muscle. We've got to work it out daily, right? In a typical week, what does hope look like for a participant, for their family, and for your staff? And where do you see these breakthroughs? How do you, as the executive director, the CEO, how do you plant those seeds of hope and nourish them?
Yeah, it's this this job, and I don't even like to call it a job, but the people, our staff, they have great highs and great lows, and they can experience both of those in a week because one of the things that we don't talk about is those traditional terms as the way that people talk about substance use. Rock bottom. Well, if they don't hit rock bottom, today with fentanyl and the other things, we know what rock bottom is because I've had plenty of our coaches have a participant that overdosed and died.
Oh,
Everybody almost has that. So don't, I tell families, I tell individuals, hey, don't talk to me about rock bottom. No one with a substance use disorder wants to live that way. No one signed up. My son may have experimented with drugs and substances to try to self-medicate from some mental health issues. No one steps up and says, hey, I want to have a substance use disorder. I want to be addicted. That's just not how this works. So, this idea that if you got to want it, you've got to whatever. So for us, it is hard sometimes. We have to celebrate those great wins so that, even when you've had that week or you've had somebody that you may have one of your participants relapsed or one of your participants maybe could have possibly died, we have to celebrate that hope or the good things that happen. Hey, one of Lacey's participants got her kids back, or she was reunited with her family. We did a video for our big fundraiser, and I was struck by one of the participants that agreed to be a part of the video. She had not been home for the holidays in 20 years.
oh my gosh.
And she talked about how excited she was to go home and said it'll be the first time that my family has seen me in recovery, not using abstinence, not using anything in all of those 20 years. And I mean, how much what a blessing and gift that was, not only to her, but to her entire family. And so, when we have those kind of things, we have to celebrate them in a big way. Or, sometimes you can get ground down, but we have that happen all the time, and our staff does a good job of celebrating those wins and lifting each other up. And, it's hard. And I see it all the time because I get a little email. I ask everybody to give me their 3 ups and 3 downs at the end of the week. And, if you got one, it's fine. But, what's something that was exciting and then something that was really disappointing. And, sometimes it's, hey, that participant I was working with, they didn't show up for one of their meetings. I hope they're okay. But some days it's, just the some Fridays, the ups are just, it's amazing to me, the success our people see. Hey, this person that I've been trying to chase down, they decided to go to treatment, or hey, we got them their first appointment with our medication assisted treatment provider, or hey, we got them into housing in an Oxford house, or we got them in this recovery house. And I mean, it's all the time, and we have to celebrate that, right? Because
You
that's
do.
it. That's how we measure it. We don't we don't measure success by are you using or not. Our measurement of success is, are you taking the steps necessary to live a self-directed life, striving to reach your full potential? And are you becoming healthy? We're not a abstinence-based only organization. We look at multiple pathways. Whatever your recovery journey is, if it helps you grow and build a sustainable recovery and a self-directed life, striving to reach your potential, we'll celebrate that. If you want to do a 12-step program, great. We have plenty of 12-step folks in our organization. But I have people, Sarah, that never went to a 12-step meeting ever. One of our key leaders, she basically rekindled her faith, and she got a therapist and worked on her childhood traumas. But her recovery is just as valid as someone who's been in 12-step, sponsored 100 people, knows the big book backwards and forwards. So for us, the win is, are you taking those small baby steps to begin your recovery journey and having a life of freedom, from this disease?
I love that. I love that. I think you're so right. It is those small steps, things we overlook, and it is about celebration. And so often we forget to celebrate. I love how your organization makes that a priority. So probably, ironically, as amazing a conversation as we've had, I feel like this last question might be one of the most important questions I asked you today. If a listener wants to help today, what is the single most useful action they can take in their community?
Yeah, if someone is listening and wants to help, I would suggest, number one, see if there's an organization in your community that kind of is similar to us. They can look on the favor.org, the National Faces and Voices of Recovery, and it will list out all the recovery community organizations in every town. And they're all spread out. Now, I wish every community had one. They don't. But, if you want to get involved, that's a place to look for, resources. I would say there's always someone in your town that, there's some group of people that are in recovery that are a great resource. Call most of the state, local drug and alcohol abuse agencies will have some kind of recovery page on their website that will list those, organizations. But like in here, if you called us, I mean, we no matter where you are in your journey, if you're an individual that needs help, great. If you're a family that wants to talk about, is my loved one, I've had people call and say, hey, is my loved one have a substance use disorder or an addiction, or do they like to party? I go, that's a great question, because, we all had somebody in our life, probably went to college with them or knew them in high school, that we were guaranteed that person was going to wash out of life. And now they're some big something, and they have a hugely successful, career and a great family and all those things like that. There are very specific things that we look for. And, some organization like us can help you determine that you have a problem. I would hope that every organization like us has some kind of family support. Man, that's the hardest part. You're so lost, looking for, how to get resources for your loved one. And, we knew no one, not a family member, no friend had ever talked to us about their experience with substance use, especially not with their kids or their young ones. But Sarah, we see it all the time, right? Average onset use age is 12 to 13. And now they start early, they start that early. They move to other substances faster. We've seen, 15-year-olds with full blown, substance use disorders, addiction to meth or fentanyl or things like that before even the age of 20. So, it is a problem within our, young adults. I would tell you, email me, get on our website, couragecentersc.org. You can email me, randy@couragecentersc.org. I'll be glad to connect you with resources or other community or recovery community organizations in your area. I've had people that I've worked with across the country that have, called me or emailed me and say, hey, I remember one time when we were doing those introductions at that training, and what's something interesting about you, and you actually said your son had a substance use disorder, and you said that you coached other families. He goes, are you still doing that? I've had people in Dallas, I've had people in Denver, I've had people all over the country that called me, and I was able to help them. Hey, if I can't do it, I know that there's someone in your area. I'll help you find the right places. But there are people out there that will help. So,
Well, Randy, thank you. And I think one little thing that I would say is please don't be ashamed and ask for help. Have that courage to ask for help.
yeah.
There's no shame in asking for help at all.
No, and the thing about addiction is, Sarah, it doesn't care about your socioeconomic status. If you live in a gated community, I promise you've got people that are struggling with substance use disorders. If you attend church or synagogue every weekend, you have somebody sitting in the pews close to you, it touches their family, no matter who you are. It's not race, it's not, part of the country you live in, but it is still so stigmatized. We're afraid to talk about it. And, part of what we do is one of the things we hear about in the recovery community is, recover out loud. We talk about it. We go to every event to say we're people with lived experience. We've gone through this. and to get people to be willing to talk about it. So, that is the first step. Admit you need some help, whether you're the individual or the family. So,
Mhm.
and there is help available, and families recover.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
we have family members. We've had people that their loved one has had very little personal recovery over the last 3 or 4 years, but they come to our family group or came and saw our marriage and family therapist to say, I had to recover. I had to work on me to let go and understand this was something I can't control. And how do I interact with my loved one in a way that's still affirming our relationship as father, son, all those things like that, or whatever it is, but yet saying it's okay for me to say no, or it's okay for me to say maybe, hey, I love you, you are my child or my brother or my sister or whatever, but it's not safe for me right now for us to be together. That's okay. And that takes work.
Yes. It does. It does. Randy, the work that you're doing is so vital and important. Your candidness and your willingness to be vulnerable and talk is inspiring. And I want you to know you've absolutely inspired me on this afternoon, and I appreciate your time. Um, I doubt there's anything I can do to help you, but if I can, please know I'm a phone call or email away, and I will definitely be cheering your team on every day. And just know you have a cheerleader. If nothing else, I'm cheering you on.
Sarah, thank you. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on with you to talk a little bit about recovery and how important it is, and that there is hope and people do get better. In our state alone, in South Carolina, there's over 400,000 people living in recovery today. So, and our state is small. So wherever you are out there, your state's probably got a lot more, but people do get better and there is hope.
There is. And what a great note to end this on. Thank you, Randy. I hope you have
Thank
a
you,
very
Sarah.
wonderful afternoon.
You too. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.